Our subject tonight is very interesting, to say the least. The mind power that we are going to be working with is the life force. To define or to describe that life force, perhaps in one word or two words, you would call it the creative life force or the generative life force. Rollo May once wrote, "Any artist or writer or musician, those who are supposedly carried away, will tell you that in the creative experience, there is a greatly heightened consciousness and very intense activity on his own part." The power that we're going to be talking about tonight is a mind power, a spirit power of activity, of creative activity. It is that aspect of spirit that has an intense movement or desire to reproduce itself in many ways. You see that creative activity in the heightened color of the sunset. You see it in all of the verdant forms of life unfolding upon this earth. Life, 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 life. How many times have you said or thought that word and repeated it? And how many times has your own life within your very being cried out for that kind of movement and of expression? And you could not even desire it, except that life itself is desiring to use you as the form through which it can express. This invisible source of energy, of substance, of form and shape and activity wants to move from the invisible into the visible, and it has to create a way, a system, and you are that system. And that's our subject tonight, that life energy that must continue to move. In his book, The 12 Powers of Man, Charles Fillmore wrote, "In the phenomenal world, that's the world of observable events, things happening that the senses can discern. Life is the energy that propels all forms to action. Life in the body is like electricity in a motor. Life is not in itself intelligent. It requires the directive power of an entity that knows where and how to apply its force in order to get the best results." In other words, this life energy is there and it is always moving, but it must be more intelligently directed of itself. It does not know how to direct itself. And this is the story of Jesus calling all of the life forces or mind powers into directed or disciplined activity. Correct control comes from the fourth dimension, or the kingdom of God, or Christ consciousness. In other words, you and I must take charge of our lives, consciously and deliberately, putting off the old, more ignorant, instinctive forms of activity, and putting on the new, more conscious, intuitive forms of action. From lower to higher and more accelerated movement, life is always unfolding. Now, Fillmore used the statement, life is the energy that propels all forms to action. The Bible does not have a word for energy. And so, the ancients, the mystics, the prophets, the writers, knowing what was taking place better than you or I, used symbols. And one of the major symbols that is used in the Bible to talk about or to describe this life energy is the word river, implying a stream of energy. And if you've ever been around a river, you know how much energy or power is in a river, a swiftly moving river. And rivers were also a natural source of life-giving creativity, sources of water and food. Man has always settled along the banks of streams or rivers. New cities grew up beside rivers, even in this country. Revelations, that happens to be the last book of the Bible is talking about the fourth dimensional, or the whole person. This person that we're going to be describing and working with next week. Tonight we're working with one aspect of the mind of a whole person, the life energy. And in the 22nd chapter, John is saying, "Then he showed me the river of the water of life, sparkling like crystal as it flowed from the throne of God. In the middle of the street of the city, and on either bank of the river grew the tree of life, bearing 12 fruits." Here again, the 12 disciples of the 12 mind faculties. "Nothing that has cursed mankind shall exist any longer in that city." And remember, that city in the Bible always means your consciousness. And this is a new city, implying a new consciousness for a new type of person that is being created. And nothing that has cursed mankind, nothing that has cursed you or disturbed you or diminished you or reduced you in the past can be in this new city. Meaning that you're one of those special people who have seen your erroneous zones, and you are in the process of making your adjustments, and you're changing, you're growing, and you're putting away the old things that have limited you, cursed you, the Bible would say. Isn't that fantastic? "But he showed me the river of the water of life, sparkling like crystal as it flowed from the throne of God." There is in every person upon this earth a stream of energy that flows in from the top of the head and flows through you and out. It happens every fractional moment of your existence. It's the river of the water of life, sparkling. If you could see it, you would see it as a pure white light. That's what it is. But it is an energy field. You are an energy field. Any scientist will tell you that. Yes, you are. But that energy is far more extensive than perhaps all but our more advanced scientists, metaphysicians can conceive. We speak this truth differently when we repeat our statement of being. God is all, both invisible and visible. One presence, one mind, one power is all. This one that is all is perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. I am an individualized expression of God. I'm ever one with this perfect life, perfect love, and perfect substance. An individualized expression, but this perfect life is constantly moving, flowing through me. And this is merely that stream of the water of life, this creativity, this activity of the life of God itself that is always in movement, seeking to express, to create. Even now where you are, a brand new universe is trying to be formed. You are a small earth, and then more than that, you're a small universe, a microcosm. Yes, you are. And that creative activity is trying to take place all over again, but it cannot until you come to believe it and give it permission, until you see that river of the water of life. I don't mean with the eye, but can conceive of it with the mind, and can begin to give it permission to do its creative thing on its terms, through you, for you. And he who will do this is blessed among all men. Edmund Sinnott wrote, "Man is a part of creation, but he also has a sphere in the creative process. His power is limited to arrangements and combinations of things already present, and he does not share in the vast primal creativeness of God." In other words, we didn't create the whole universe. But in a real sense, he is a co-creator in the universe. This power, the highest expression of creativeness of all life, is surely one of the most godlike qualities he owns. You and I are co-creators, co-heirs with Christ. And the mind power that we're studying is generative life, and the word Generate means to bring into existence, to cause to be produced, to engender offspring or to beget, to form. You exist, don't you? My dictionary defines life as existence, or principle of existence, conceived as belonging to the soul. Now you exist. But did you know that your existence itself has never ever of itself pleased you or satisfied or fulfilled you? Think about it. Your very existence, meaning sitting at home, looking out, peering out the window sadly, staring off into space, simply existing. Do you like it? No. Existence itself is not enough. Your life itself is not enough. It is not until that life goes into action and begins to form things and shape things and create things and give color, texture, and quality and movement, until you, this form of creation, go into motion. Until that happens, your soul hungers. And you see, one of the problems has been that we have been sitting, so to speak, waiting for life to come and to present its forms to us to make us happy. Or for someone to come and save us by making us delighted with their presence. Their little existence jammed up against ours, happy, happy, happy. For about an hour and a half. No. You are life itself, and you must move and be and create. But not at the lower, limited, purely physical, selfish, for one's own self level. That's the first movement. In our ignorance, we have to start somewhere, and we always start in the basement. Judas Iscariot is the disciple of Jesus who stands for the life force. And it was Judas who betrayed him, but no more so than the rest of the disciples. They all did. Just as all of your mind faculties betray you every day. Every day they get you into different kinds of trouble, or at least they don't save you from the trouble that you're in. They deny you. Every day they all do. The difference is that Judas is the one that when Judas gets you in trouble, it's real trouble. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. The life faculty in man is something that I want you to think about, because it is not just limited to one aspect only. It is a many-faceted faculty. But it is the generative or creative process, and it has to do with all kinds of creative activities. It is the genius in you trying to awaken, to come alive. It is your ability to do all kinds of things that you haven't believed that you can do, but that you can do intuitively, beautifully. It is your capacity to give form and shape to your existence, to make your existence come alive and joyous and meaningful and worthwhile, not only for yourself, but for every person that can ever come within range of your vibration. That's what we're talking about, the power that can do that. The mystical power that can do this for you. Now, a power that is so magnificent in its scope and so capable of creating so much that is high must also, if wrongly used, be very destructive. You can play around with the 110 volts of electricity. You can't get in the bathtub and take your radio. But you start getting up into 220 or 440, and be careful, because you will electrocute yourself. And when you start playing around with the life force, you're playing around with a universal energy of creativity, which is also self-destruct. And that's what happened to Judas. Judas was given to you and to me as an example to show what happens if we wrongly use the life force. And so Judas went off and killed himself. But the life force did not die. When Judas killed himself, that did not mean that there were 11 disciples left. Did you think that? No. They called up another one named Matthias. Do you know what Judas Iscariot means in the Hebrew? It means a man of the cities. A man of hostile encounters. A man of conveniences. And this typifies that part of our human thinking which, although it has caught the higher vision of life, still resorts to underhanded methods in order to meet its obligations. Remember that Judas carried the money bag. He was the treasurer for Jesus and the group. Now he was replaced in time by Matthias, who means given wholly unto Jehovah, signifying the lifting of this faculty. Judas was totally concerned about himself and no other person. Maybe you haven't picked up on that thought in reading the Bible. Most of us have not read it that carefully. But probably some of you saw Jesus Christ Superstar, and if you did, you watched Judas in action, didn't you? And that little feller was interested in one person, himself. One more thing before we get into the body of the lesson. Something that it's very important that we see. I'd planned to have one of you stand up with a pendant, a chain, a metal chain, and I was going to hold that chain above your head, and I will after class for a moment. Those of you who are listening to this on tape can take a pendant or a chain from a lady's neck and hold it just above the head of a person, just above the Christ crown, center of your head. And as you do, you will see that chain begin to swing around and around, and you'll be shown that there is an energy field, a field of activity. And if you hold that above a person of the opposite sex, the chain will stop swinging and move in the opposite direction. You'll see it later. You can try it for yourself. Now, the Earth is an instrument that receives and distributes energy from the universe, from our solar system. And that field of electronic energy that surrounds the Earth is a magnetic field, and the North Pole is the positive pole, and the South Pole is the negative pole. Now, energy in any field flows from positive to negative. Now, negative does not mean negative as we ordinarily think of negative. Negative is the complement of the positive. It takes the two poles to maintain the action. They complement each other. And the positive flow of energy can only be as strong as the negative pole can receive. Your positive pole or intake pole cannot receive more energy than your negative pole, the receptive pole, or the distributing pole can handle. If you break down the positive, you're breaking down the negative, and vice versa. If you disconnect the poles, the energy will cease. I'll show you how to do that. But the energy is flowing from the positive to the negative pole in this case. And the negative is the distributing pole. And Judas is, the Judas power is that mind power that is the distributing pole for this universal stream of energy that comes into us. But the point is that both poles are necessary. Judas is a necessary mind power. And our problems have been in how that power has been used, not in the power itself. Through the Christ center at the top, we have universal life energy streaming in from God, creativity, creative life power that can accomplish the most exalted things or can accomplish the most ungodly things, depending upon the choices made by the consciousness of the person. And Judas, the negative pole in the body is located in the sex center, in the area of the creative organs of each one of us. Very interesting, isn't it? Let's see if we can understand in a new way what life and energy and sex really are, so that we can come to handle life and energy and sex differently, because it's important that we know about life and energy and sex. They're always going to be with us, friends, always. Now, what happens at the negative pole, or Judas is ignorant of his real nature and does not know his correct role in life, and is therefore dissipated and weakened, is obsessed and willful, and is selfish and self-centered? Well, that's where the world is. And Judas is weakened by ignorant, erroneous, negative participation in life, including man's sexual expression. Our sexual expression is merely one aspect only of the creative life force. It is not the whole thing at all. No. Your ability to do so many things is the larger aspect, your creative talents and abilities. But the sexual expression is a most important one, because that's probably the area that causes us the most concern and joy. And so it sells out the Christ, because it short-circuits the power, and this lends to constriction, power shortage, and failure. I would say that most of the people who are in prisons are in prison because of their Judas activity. Did you know that? Because of the way that they handle energy. The wrong use of the creative life force will rob a bank successfully, and then it'll get caught. It does all of those things destructive. A creative power used ignorantly, and therefore destructive. Now remember that for this lesson, when I say Judas, I am not talking about a person, but I'm talking about a level or a type of consciousness. It also symbolizes desire and appropriation, or the desire to seek and acquire or gain possessions, and this is good. But it is not good if the desire to gain possessions becomes obsessive, and possessions of themselves become an end in themselves and a source of security. That's very destructive. That's turning away from the Christ. That's denying the Lord God of the universe, and that's saying, I'm going to get mine at your expense because I must have mine in order to be secure. And that becomes an obsession that many people are quite proud of. You see, we have a great tendency to be proud of the incorrect use of the life energy, and it destroys us. At one place in the book of John, the 6th chapter, Jesus was talking to his disciples, and he said, did I not choose you 12? And one of you has a devil in his heart. And he was speaking of Judas, who was planning to betray him. One of you has a devil in his heart. Let's, for the next few moments, think of that one aspect of the creative life force that we think of as sex. Why is our culture so sex-obsessed? Our civilization draws upon centuries of sexual superstition, which has become a part of cultural and religious dogma. And there's the ever-present implication that sex is outside the spiritual realm. Has anyone in your life ever told you that you had a right to not only turn your will and your life, but your sex life over to the care of God, and that as a matter of fact, that's probably the one area that needs the most spiritual attention? You see, we've been told that it was not spiritual at all, that it had nothing to do with our spiritual nature, and I'm here to help you correct that thought. It does. It really does. We've been told that this part of us was dirty, sinful, wrong, and animal, and it is animal if incorrectly used, but it is spiritual if raised to its highest, and is one of our strongest avenues to creativity and to God. But we will never understand ourselves and create this condition in consciousness until we begin to see ourselves as a part of God, and to see that the pattern for sex was necessarily designed by universal intelligence and must therefore be perfect. It's a part of the creative process. and is beautiful when correctly used. That energy can help you to draw closer to God and to the good that is yours to experience. Probably the person who has spoken the most intelligently, or written the most intelligently about this activity is Napoleon Hill in his great book, Think and Grow Rich. Turn to step 10, the chapter Toward Riches, the mystery of sex transmutation, and I'll read rapidly from his book. Sex transmutation is simple and easily explained. It means the switching of the mind from thoughts of physical expression to thoughts of some other nature. Now, it doesn't mean to keep them switched all the time. It just means don't be so obsessed. Sex desire is the most powerful of human desires. And when driven by this desire, men develop keenness of imagination, courage, willpower, persistence, and creative ability unknown to them in other times. So strong and impelling is the desire for sexual contact that men freely run the risk of life and reputation to indulge it. When harnessed and redirected along other lines, this motivating force maintains all of its attributes of keenness, of imagination, courage, and so forth, which may be used as powerful creative forces, and listen to this, literature, art, or in any other profession or calling, including, of course, the accumulation of riches. The transmutation of sex energy calls for the exercise of willpower, to be sure, but the reward is worth the effort. The desire for sexual expression is inborn and natural. The desire cannot and should not be submerged or eliminated. But it should be given an outlet through forms of expression which enrich the body, the mind, and the spirit of man. If not given this form of outlet through transmutation, it will seek outlets through purely physical channels. The emotion, or the energy of sex, is an irresistible force. When driven by this emotion, men become gifted with a superpower for action. Understand this truth and you will catch the significance of the statement that sex transmutation contains the secret of creative ability. And when we're talking about the sex energy, we're talking about the life force. That's all we're talking about. It's the universal stream of life force that is always in you and is as spiritual as God himself. Destroy the sex glands, whether in man or beast, and you have removed the major source of action. For proof of this, observe what happens to any animal after it has been castrated. And there are many different kinds of castration. There's the psychological or emotional castration that you have seen or experienced in a person. And that person in that moment begins to lose their identity and their power. You see, this is an energy that we don't have to turn off. We must keep it alive, but properly utilizing it. Fortunate indeed is the person who has discovered how to give sex emotion an outlet through some form of creative effort. The people of greatest achievement are these people with highly developed sex natures, people who have learned the art of sex transmutation. These are the people who have accumulated great fortunes and achieved outstanding recognition in literature, art, industry, architecture, and their professions. Take inventory of those whom you know to be people of great achievement and see if you can find one among them who is not highly sexed. And that doesn't mean oversexed. Highly sexed. People with a high vibration or energy, a charisma. You can feel it. Sex energy, or the life force, is the creative energy of all geniuses. There never has been and never will be a great leader, builder, or artist lacking in this driving force of sex. Surely no one will misunderstand these statements to mean that all who are highly sexed are geniuses. Man attains to the status of a genius only when and if he stimulates his mind so that it draws upon the forces available. Chief among the stimuli with which the stepping up may be produced is sex energy. The mere possession of this energy is not sufficient to produce a genius. The energy must be transmuted from desire for physical contact into some other form of desire and action before it will lift one to the status of a genius. Far from becoming geniuses because of great sex desires, the majority of people lower themselves through misunderstanding and misuse of this great force to the status of the lower animals. And that's exactly the story that Judas was demonstrating in the life and teachings of Jesus the Christ, and that you and I have experienced and demonstrated over and over again. If Judas controls our life force, especially in its sexual expression, be careful. Because remember that Judas doesn't care about you or anyone else, just his own desires. And don't let him get you into any situation or any relationship unless you're ready to freely face the consequences of his acts. And if you understand what I just said, it'll save you lots of heartache and trouble. Everything that Judas gets you into, you will face sooner or later and have to get you out of. And in some instances, it may be enough to make you want to die, to commit suicide, not literally, like Judas did. But this is designed by Spirit to help us to come to understand and to love and to forgive and to redeem, to bring Judas under control. Finally, we get to the place that we get sick and tired of that kind of erroneous, ignorant, negative, destructive participation in life in general and in sex in particular. And that's when the negative pole has been obsessed with the idea of gratification of its instinctual drives or desires or sensations at any level. You are no longer an instinctive creature. You are a spiritual being, intuitive. And all of our faculties of the mind must be lifted up above the level of the instincts, the animal instincts, in the case of sex, just for gratification, caring not for another. You see, that Judas makes a god of sexual experience or of possessing persons or things, and therefore becomes insane and out of control. And that Judas, that consciousness, has no concern for the good of others. Only the motivating factor is self-gratification. And this is what leads to destruction. The lack of awareness of the direction that one's acts are leading that person. And the lack of concern for the good of other people or for our higher nature is portrayed symbolically in the betraying for 30 pieces of silver, which were later tossed away, incidentally. Judas didn't even keep the money. Isn't that something? You don't even get to keep what Judas gets you into. It's a fantastic concept. Now, the life energy is not at fault. It's the manner of its use that is destructive. I think there's a movie that's being filmed now about one of the baseball players, the Tigers, LaFleur, who was in prison for a period of time because he had used the life energy, by his own admission, incorrectly. And he has that turned around. Judas has been changed to Matthias. And a life has been changed dramatically. They're making a movie about it because they are hoping that that movie will inspire a lot of other people who can identify with that person. But Judas will resist and misunderstand the Christ nature more than the other 11 faculties. Why? Because Judas believes that it's going to have to give up its function. And religion has helped us to misunderstand. We have not understood that we don't have to give it up, but it must be raised up to a new dimension. And Judas is slow to learn that its primary responsibility is to receive the life energy and channel it in many, many, many ways, that it must be transmuted, and that you can use it to think and feel and grow rich, or to think and use this energy to become this fantastic new person that you are in whatever field of endeavor that you have chosen. It's this life energy that's going to get you there. Don't turn it off. Turn it on. Find the rheostat and turn up the volume. Turn yourself on to life. But creative applications of that life energy. You have the right to be alive and more alive and more alive than that. Give yourself permission to come alive. How many times have you made mistakes in the past and slowly turned yourself off so that you wouldn't make a mistake again? Oh, you're nodding your heads, aren't you? You have a feeling for what I'm talking about. The idea is not to turn your volume down, but to turn yourself on, but to be raised up to where the mistakes don't happen, the creative action takes place. You see, Judas never understood that the energy is to be used only in ways that will elevate oneself and all other persons, so that whoever we touch is raised up and comforted. Judas will not love the Christ. And so we must give a new consciousness charge of the faculty of life energy, one who is more God-centered. And we call his name Matthias, meaning given wholly unto God. That's why they brought a new disciple in. Isn't that fantastic? Of course it is. We've discussed one aspect of life energy expressing in man the power of two bodies to come together and then bring into being another body called a baby or a child. The power to cause, to exist, or to produce, or to beget another body. But does our creative power stop there? Or is that only one small facet? You see, it may be absolutely unnecessary for you to ever have a child in order to be creative. In your case, it may be necessary for you to not have. I don't know. I'm not trying to imply either way. Some people have been led to believe that unless they had children, unless they reproduced children, that they were not creative and that somehow they had missed all of life. It's not true. What do you do after your children are grown, or your childbearing years have passed, or you never got married? Well, what about your life that already exists? What about your existence? We agreed a while ago that your existence itself is not enough. What about giving life to your existence? New forms, new shapes. What about becoming creative, expressive? Well, creative life has the power to evolve from one's own thought or imagination, from one's own inner process. Creative life has the power to make a whole new life for you by investing your life with new character and with new functions, with new capacities, with new abilities. How does that relate to giving the life force a new name, Matthias? It has the power to originate and to invent, to produce from the ethers or from universal substance all that you need. Do you believe that? Do you believe that your life has the power, that you have within you the power that can create for you all that you need? Judas didn't believe it. Judas did not believe in the Christ power, the creative force. To Judas, outer sensual things were all that were important. The change can't take place until we assume the responsibility to become creative beings, unselfish, loving, and to be transformed. We're going to stop wasting our lives and our talent and our creativity, our energy, and we're going to put together a package that will become absolutely beautiful. Judas, representing the negative pole of life, makes the positive of Christ pole complete. A flow of energy requires two poles, remember? If the negative is weakened, it automatically weakens both. And strong negative emotions have disrupted this power line in our lives and has burned out cells and tissues and organs, has caused disease to sickness. And perhaps your life has come apart in every seam. If that's happened, be not afraid. You have just come to the greatest moment of your life. Whew. Because you have within you the creative force and intelligent power that can do all the things that need to be done by you if you will stop blaming God like Judas did, crying out in self-pity, if God is so loving and so good, why has all this happened to me? To get your attention. That's why. Judas never ever apologized, never asked for forgiveness. He never became willing to clear away the wreckage of his past, never became concerned about another person. He committed suicide. That's the greatest act of selfishness that ever was. Are you willing to become a power center for God's own creative life force? Are you? It needs you. It needs your life. Well, Judas or Matthias? Creativity or destruction? Which is it going to be? There is no middle ground. Or shall you choose beauty, love, sensitivity, concern, the desire to touch all others in a gentle, comforting, creative, healing way? George Eliot wrote, "All geniuses have a common characteristic. They are extraordinarily sensitive, impressionable, absorbent, hospitable, assimilative. They feel not so much that they're doing something as that something is being done through them. All great work in art or music or literature, and character as well, is associated with this consciousness of released power." My beautiful friend, you are a genius who has just arrived if you will release this creative life energy in the manner that the Christ of you will reveal. Let you and I have the greatest week we've ever had, believing and practicing.
This concludes the lesson on Side A. Now, please fast forward to the end and turn the cassette over for the continuation of The Superpowers of the Mind.